as we convene tonight, we're once again sadly reminded that freedom is not free. We had a young man who grew up in Washington County, Marine Corporal Phil Charte. He just recently fell in battle in Afghanistan. Our thoughts and prayers go out to his family. And this is coming on the heels of several losses right here in New York 20. Derek Farley in Columbia County, and Ben Osborne up in Lake George, and then Dave Miller in Saratoga. You know, these great Americans, they're never coming back. There's a hole in the families that can never be filled. What we can do now is we can honor their sacrifices like we honor all those who gave their lives for our country. All those in this war and all the previous wars, they gave their lives so that we could live in this country, in the freest and wealthiest country in the history of mankind. And it just wouldn't have been so without those who are willing to sacrifice and stand up for our freedom. So we think about the families. We think about them today, and we think about them always. And, you know, I think it's also important to reflect on the fact that we are an exceptional nation. We were so at birth. We were different from all the other nations up to that time. You think about the Declaration of Independence. In an era that we live, where bills are often over 2,000 pages, in some cases over 2,500 pages, and you think about our Declaration of Independence, one single page on parchment. One single page. It changed the history of the world. That document. A beautiful document. A clear document. A summoning document. That put forth the radical idea. The radical idea that we could live free. That we're created equal and endowed with certain unalienable rights. That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the government, us. You know, in 2010 you say, of course. In 1776, that was a radical idea. This was an age when kings and queens had subjects, and the idea that anyone could live free was foreign from anyone's mind. These were the days of aristocracy and a court. So when we brought forth that idea, no radical idea like that comes into being without a fight. And our experience was no different. We had to fight to bring that into existence. And in the Revolution, in which was 7 years, we defeated the greatest superpower in the world at that time. Right here. Farmers. Right here in upstate New York contributing to that revolution. Big battle took place right here in this district up in Saratoga. The idea that we could live free. And then we came forward with a Constitution. And in that Constitution, where you see the fact that the codification of the idea that we could live free. And to do that, through the history of mankind, even though we're always searching for a virtuous leader, and we'll never stop, we also believed that to ensure of our liberties, we needed to have checks and balances. We weren't going to take a chance, because we didn't want to end up brokenhearted looking at the course of history. And so we set up a government where power was checked by power. You had a Congress, had two houses, House and a Senate. You had the Congress checked by the President, and then you had the courts. So all three of these major institutions, separate institutions, sharing power, so that we did not have tyrannical power. But you know, that wasn't enough. That was the federal government. The federal government was to be checked by the state government, to make sure that, and we chose the word state carefully. Could have chose any word there, right? We chose state because of the sovereignty that was co-sovereignty that was given to the states, that was shared in a confederation early on in the Articles, and then later on in the United States of America. But the idea that we would limit the power, we would limit the power of the federal government, and we would limit the power of the state government, and that we had a Bill of Rights. And you take a look at that Bill of Rights, and if you ever have time, this is an interesting thing to do. Go through the Declaration of Independence. After you get through about the first three, some of which I recited to you tonight, look at the bottom 2/3 of that document. It's basically like a divorce document. You know? We're telling King George, I mean, it says, with due respect for people who pay attention in the world, we should tell you why we're doing this. And we list all these things that happened. We talked about a king that denied us representation. that wouldn't allow us to assemble, that was telling us how we were going to practice religions, that was denying us our arms, to keep and bear arms, and quartering troops in our homes. You take all those grievances, now take a look at your Bill of Rights, and there you have it. We put that in there because our founders, like us today, were all products of our experience. Founders were no different, and they wanted to ensure that that didn't happen. So they gave us those rights. Those rights were for us. Some initial debate about that. In the 19th century, some people thought that those rights only pertained to the federal government and us. And then in the 14th Amendment, we had the wisdom to come forward and to say, no, those rights belong to us. States can't step on us either. The state governments can't step on our rights. Those Bill of Rights apply to everyone and to all of us. And we have the freedom to assemble. We have the freedom of our speech. We have the freedom to practice our religion. And why is the Second Amendment there? Well, think about it. When Paul Revere was writing, he was letting us know that our government was coming to get the guns. They were going to get the magazine. And that was fresh in the minds of our founders. If anybody's telling you that the Second Amendment was there for hunting, they've got it all wrong. It was there because, Great Britain, you think about Great Britain, we look at Great Britain now and we say that was a foreign nation. In 1775, that was our government. That was our government. We put the Second Amendment in there to say your government can't come get our guns. We have the freedom for that. And then all the other amendments, you can basically walk them straight down in terms of not having soldiers in your home without having your consent, and your right to proper search of your home, and your right to take the Fifth Amendment in terms of not incriminating yourself, all the way on down. Here's the point. We are an exceptional nation. The first nation that ever came forward with that kind of idea that we could live free like this, without a king or a queen. And I think that's important. As we think about today, and we look at the challenges that we're in, and we're clearly in challenges, let's not forget that a couple things. First of all, there's nothing wrong with America that we can't fix with all the greatness left here in America. We can do this. Certainly you're disappointed, I'm disappointed, but I'm not discouraged. And I think there's a big difference. Because I truly believe if we make the right choices, our best days are still in front of us. They are. They're still in front of us. We're going to make this happen. So as we look out today, and you look at the leading economic indicators, and they're concerning. You look at unemployment. Unemployment last week just went from 9.5% to 9.6%. We're moving in the wrong direction. You look at home sales. Home sales are dropping. You look at gross domestic product, GDP, which is a measure of our economy. It just got revised downward a couple weeks ago to 1.6% in the last quarter. And, time after time, in a period when we need leadership, we clearly need leadership. And these issues that we have, they're not Republican issues and they're not Democrat issues. These are American problems. And by the way, I think it's fair to say that both parties contributed to the economy, to the debt, and to the situation with the war. Now we can haggle, and we do, about who's more to be responsible, but I think it's fair to say that both parties contributed to this. What we need right now is leadership to move forward. And we will.